Hi, everybody!
This is something I've wanted to discuss for a while. It's finally time to say what no one else has the guts to. The doghouse is looking mighty dirty, and it's time for Sony to clean it. Now, what I'm saying comes from a real place of love. Like most so-called Sony ponies who grew up in the 90s, I got into PlayStation just because of Crash Bandicoot. After that was my gateway to the brand, I got into their other games. Up until 2020, Naughty Dog was my favorite studio. Myself and many others considered it the crown jewel in the PlayStation crown. But Naughty Dog's latest game that isn't a remaster or remake was a real spit in the face to longtime fans. Now, if you look at the real discourse around Naughty Dog, you'll find people who actually give a shit about the company putting them where they belong, in the trash heap. But for Sony to clean house, they have to start at the top. That being Neil Druckmann, who it seems might be leaving AAA gaming anyways. Which brings us nicely into our first point. Not only does the writing suck worse than Of Mice and Men, seriously fuck that book, but the characters suck as well. This isn't just a problem with The Last of Us, though that is the more egregious of the two. Since taking over, the Uncharted characters feel like pale imitations of themselves. That's part of why I found Uncharted 4 so bland. Just about the only good thing about Naughty Dog games nowadays is the graphics. But that reminds me of something. You ever hear the song by the Monks called Nice Legs? Shame About the Face? That pretty much sums up characters Druckmann comes up with. And the game's modern Naughty Dog is shitting out. There's only so much makeup you can put on a ruddy pig. Then there's Abby, a face not even a mother could love. This character deserves all the hate she gets. Just like every other character in The Last of Us, she's a piece of shit. Don't believe me? Tessa's quote from the first game all but confirms it.
About me.
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really? Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our...
But why do the characters suck so bad? They have much more in common with vacuum cleaners than actual people. It's the fact that writing makes them too tropey and too flawed. This is coming from someone whose favorite games are JRPGs, possibly the most trope-heavy games out there. Now, I get it. Unlikable characters can work when done right. Just look at Game of Thrones. Almost everyone is an unlikable piece of shit in that franchise too. But the difference between Game of Thrones and The Last of Us, the characters from Game of Thrones at least have some kind of interesting or redeeming trait. Characters from The Last of Us have no redeemable traits. Also, yes, that includes everyone's beloved Joel, who you could argue is the second biggest piece of shit in the series. Now, I want to say things will get better if just Druckmann is removed, but things aren't that simple. It's systemic. So, how is it systemic at this point? For those asking that, use some logic. Yes, Druckmann is a problem. And under his tenure, Naughty Dog's crunch culture has gotten worse than it was during the days working on the PS1 and 2, an era where they were pumping out games every year and actually making titles that were better quality. Sad really, that it now takes them the better part of a decade to squeeze out two games that are pale imitations of their predecessors. You can't just address the problem by removing Druckmann though, you have to remove all of his cronies too, or the problem will remain the same. If real change is going to happen, Naughty Dog needs to remove anyone who's squarely in the Druckmann camp. Then Naughty Dog would be back to making games for gamers, not mediocre walking simulators intended for whiny non-gamers. Seriously, the only people I know who like modern Naughty Dog are normies and non-gamers. Anyone who takes gaming seriously as a hobby thinks they're crap, which indicates just how toxic an asset Druckmann has been for the company. In the past, people used to be hyped for Naughty Dog games, as they knew they'd at least get a fun experience. You can't say that about the last handful of Naughty Dog games. Their last actual fun game was Uncharted 3, which is widely considered the worst game in the franchise. It's also over a decade old. If they were any other studio, Naughty Dog would have gotten the old Yeller treatment long ago. At this point, Naughty Dog is relying on past success and brand recognition. That's partially why their Last of Us multiplayer project got canned. Also, since it's attached to that toxic IP, it would have flopped harder than a lubed-up soccer player. It was supposed to come out in 2020. Yet again, you can only put so much makeup on a ruddy pig.
Tell me when I'm telling lies!
If it had been any fucking good, Sony would have released it. The only way Naughty Dog will ever be good again is when Druckmann and numpties like him are fired. It's not like the AAA games he focused on are even turning a profit anymore. Studios like Insomniac even pointed out this type of game production is no longer sustainable, and that AA type experiences are required to keep the ship afloat. Also, if you look at the majority of the beloved games from Naughty Dog's previous work, they all emulated AA experiences. Now, they were clearly good in the past. I want to say they could be good again. But if Sony just hires one of Druckmann's yes men, then they'll remain in the doghouse with most gamers. Plus, Naughty Dog should be much more than they are. They're a company worth a few $100 million, when they should be $1 billion business. Yes, that is a pipe bomb reference. It seems
Oops, I'm breaking the fourth wall.
But here's the thing, Naughty Dog was on a great trajectory in the early 2010s. They were still beloved by gamers, normies and hardcore ones alike. They were creating iconic characters and IPs. It's like they just needed to forge ahead and not squander their goodwill. But disappointing release after disappointing release makes them look sloppier than a McDonald's burger covered in so much mayo, it looks like a
totally 100% TOS friendly item that I will not say, because if I do say it, it will 100% break TOS rules. Dude, I'm telling you, I thought I sent you the memo saying you need to tone the crassness down. This is not Def Jam Comedy Club in the early 2000s. Jesus, man!
Okay, maybe I should tone down the crassness a little bit, but the fact still remains, I'd rather
shove my junk in a blender
than play another crappy game that Druckmann has touched. To quote from Uncharted 2, everything he touches turns to shit. And it's because no one has the balls to say no to him. So, can Naughty Dog actually be redeemed? Or are they on a highway to hell from which they can never return? Now, I can hear the unwashed masses saying I'm stupid on this one, that Naughty Dog is doing just fine under the helm of Druckmann. However, let me enlighten you on the matter. They clearly aren't. They obviously need a change of leadership. While I can't tell you who they should hire, I can tell you this. They can be redeemed if they repent from the ways of Druckmann. Their redemption will come via them actually getting back to gameplay-focused games. Their 4 cracks at Crash Bandicoot were focused on the gameplay. Their games in the Jak and Daxter franchise were as well. Hell, even though the early Uncharted games were a bit more story-centric, they still had their root in being fun to play first, and the story was secondary. This is actually something the gaming industry could improve on. Focus on gameplay first, and story later. It's something I'd argue most Japanese developers still understand, that if you're making a game, the actual game side of things should be fun. When you're doing the types of games Druckmann makes, you might as well be making a fucking movie at that point. It'd still be a shitty movie, but at least it'd be better suited for that medium. Cinematic games are really only good if the story is halfway decent, but Druckmann couldn't write a good story if his life depended on it. His go-to tactic is to manipulate the player into caring by pulling at the lowest hanging fruit. If this was writing 101, his teacher would fail his sorry ass. Deservedly so. At this point, Naughty Dog would need to launch a brand new IP or return to one that doesn't have any baggage associated with it, which basically means if they're reaching into the legacy bag, a new Jak game is required. It'd have to be a reboot though. If I were put in charge, I'd opt for a new IP with almost a wholly new set of staff members, maybe some of the current junior employees that have yet to be corrupted. Naughty Dog has a sickness, and the sickness is rising. I have now enlightened you on why Naughty Dog needs to clean house. You're welcome. Check out one of my videos on screen now, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.